What do a French sound pioneer, a microprocessor, and Marley Marl have in common? They each helped shape the invention that changed music forever, the sampler. Before hip-hop had MPCs, before house music had chopped vocals, artists were already finding ways to capture sound and flip it into something new. And the roots of it all trace back to a man named Pierre Schaeffer and his radical idea that completely changed music. To understand how it all started, we need to go all the way back to 1940s Paris, where Pierre Schaeffer had carved out a sonic laboratory beneath the studios of France's national radio broadcaster, Radio Diffusion Française, the basement filled with turntables, mixers, sound effects records, and a disc-cutting lathe. He called it Studio d'Essai, or in English, the Studio of Experimentation. But Schaeffer wasn't there to record music in the traditional sense. He was there to rethink how it could be recorded. Armed with a portable disc recorder, he roamed the streets of Paris capturing the everyday. Train brakes screeching, barges on the Seine. Then, back in the lab, he'd cut, reverse, and loop the sounds. He called it Musique Concrète, because unlike classical music, which began with notes on a page, this began with real sound. Schaeffer coined a new term, the sound object, and another that would echo through music history, the sample. His first major work, Cinq études de bruit, or 5 studies of noises, sounded almost like hallucinations. Looped locomotives, stuttering voices, clanging metal stitched together by hand. It wasn't about the source anymore, it was about how the listener heard it. And this type of listening was termed acousmatic, which was hearing a sound without seeing what made it. By 1950, Schaeffer had teamed up with composer Pierre Henry, and together they founded Groupe de Recherche de Musique Concrète, the first studio built for this strange, radical approach to music. Their most famous early work was Symphony for One Man Alone, and that was composed entirely from human breath, laughter, footsteps, and machinery. At the time, critics said it wasn't music, a tale as old as time when it comes to sample-based creation. But that didn't stop Schaeffer. Over the next decade, he and Henry pioneered the use of magnetic tape for sound manipulation, introducing tools like the morphophone, a tape head looping machine, the phonogene, an early keyboard-based sampler, and a multi-track tape machine that laid the groundwork for modern studio production. And their tools and ideas might have seemed niche at the time, but they'd go on to shape the sound of entire genres and help inspire one of music's most revolutionary inventions, the sampler. After Pierre Schaeffer cracked open the idea of turning sound into music, a wave of innovators across countries and genres started playing with ideas in their own way. They weren't using samplers yet, but the concept was slowly being shaped piece by piece. In the US, there was guitarist and inventor Les Paul, best known for pioneering the electric guitar. He was building what he called the Octopus, the world's first 8-track tape machine. Les and his wife Mary Ford were experimenting with all sorts of things: close miking, overdubbing, and multi-tracking, stacking harmonies and layering guitar parts like a tape-based jigsaw puzzle.
Mary will hear the part that's already made, and then she sings onto it, all right?
Somewhere there's music, how faint the tune. Now I'll add a tenor part to that. Somewhere there's music, how faint the tune. Would you like to hear the third part?
Yes.
Somewhere there's music, how faint the tune.
Somewhere there's music, how faint the tune. Somewhere there's heaven.
Meanwhile, in London at the BBC Radiophonic Workshop, Delia Derbyshire was building music by hand, literally. She was stitching together sounds in an era before synths and samplers even existed.
If the sound we want exists already in real life, say, we can go and record it. We can get the lower sounds we need from the rhythm by slowing down the tape, and the higher sounds by speeding up the tape. And then all we have to do is cut the notes to the right length. We can join them together on a loop and listen to them.
And she even used these methods to create the legendary Doctor Who theme tune in 1963. Next came a keyboard that quietly pushed things forward. In 1963, a British invention called the mellotron appeared, and it was inspired by an earlier American instrument called the Chamberlin. It looked like a regular electric piano, but under the hood it was packed with tape.
It's a musical computer. The right hand is lead instruments with a choice of 18 different ones, and the left hand is rhythms in this half and backgrounds in this half, and it's all been fed onto hundreds of tape tracks.
wasn't digital, but it let musicians play recorded sounds. Strings, choirs, horns. Its most iconic moment, the haunting strings at the beginning of the Beatles' Strawberry Fields Forever. Meanwhile, in Kingston, Jamaica, another revolution was quietly taking place. Producers like the legend King Tubby were experimenting with tape machines and mixing consoles in ways no one had before.
King Tubby and his contemporaries started to push the boundaries of sound as they tried to create more and more individual versions of original recordings. Playing his mixing desk like an instrument, Tubby's studio became the go-to place to get a track reversioned.
He'd strip songs down to just drum and bass, throw delay and echo across vocals, and rebuild the groove from the ground up live on the desk. And even without the sampler, it planted a powerful idea. Recorded music wasn't fixed. It could be pulled apart, reimagined, and flipped into something entirely new. Together, all of these pioneers were chipping away at a new musical language. But they were still missing one crucial piece of the puzzle, a machine that could do it all. For decades, all of these inventions, from Musique Concrète to dub, relied on manual techniques. But in the late 1970s, a new kind of instrument arrived, powered by a brand new invention, the microprocessor.
You're looking at something so astonishing, it almost contradicts everyday conceptions of reality. It does the work of a room full of electrical circuits, yet it uses almost no energy.
Before this, machines could only do one thing at a time. But with the new microprocessor, they could record, store, edit and play sounds all on the same machine. Two Australian schoolmates, Peter Vogel and Kim Ryrie, had been dreaming of creating the ultimate music machine.
When we were at school, Peter Vogel and I had the run of the science block, basically. We pretended to be working on some sort of research, and we were usually doing something fairly nefarious.
And they weren't part of the music industry, but they found their way in by adapting a digital audio engine, originally developed by engineer Tony Furz. With that engine and the newly available microprocessor, they created something completely new.
We could sample sounds directly, recording them to memory, and then play that on the keyboard.
It was called the Fairlight CMI.
So all of these sounds are pre-produced or produced synthetically, and then when you hit this, it tells the machine, let's hear that sound.
Plus, you can sample sounds. In other words, you can plug a microphone into the back of the instrument and talk into it or make any kind of sound. It'll digitize that sound and make it possible to play that sound on the keyboard.
And artists like Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush were some of the first to get their hands on it.
It was one of the best things to happen for me alongside rhythm machines.
Kate Bush used it to craft her standout hit, Running Up That Hill, from scratch. And then there was this. An orchestral stab lifted from a Stravinsky record that would go on to be one of the most iconic sounds in digital music. But all of this came at a price. The Fairlight cost more than a house at the time, and you could only really find it in elite studios.
The studio had a lot of expensive equipment. It had something called a Fairlight computer, which was like one of the first samplers that ever came out. It was like $100,000.
Sampling as we know it was finally here, but it wasn't accessible yet. The Fairlight may have changed the game, but only for those that could afford to pay. For everyone else, sampling remained a distant dream. Right, quick heads up, if you're interested in sampling soulful, vintage-inspired compositions, I just dropped a new sample pack called Aperitivo. It's inspired by 60s and 70s European film scores and that dusty library sound that producers like Madlib and Alchemist love to sample. You get 10 full compositions, plus stems and MIDI if you really want to pull them apart. Right now there's a buy one, get one free offer running on our website, so you can grab any pack and get another one free using the code SECONDCOURSE. Or if you're quick, you can grab the pack using the code Aperitivo50 for 50% off, but that's only for the first 25 buyers. And if you want to grab that, the link for that is in the description. Anyway, let's get back to the story. By the early 1980s, drum machines were already reshaping modern music. The Roland TR-808 laid the rhythmic foundation for electro and early hip-hop, from Afrika Bambaata's Planet Rock to Marvin Gaye's Sexual Healing. But before samplers were affordable, producers had to get creative.
I came from a tradition of making pause tapes. If you heard a piece, you'd have to record it, rewind it, get that piece back.
And in 1984, the Emulator 2 arrived. Much cheaper than the Fairlight, but at $8,000 still out of reach for the average producer. However, in 1985, the SP-12 arrived, the first sampler made for working musicians. A digital drum machine that let you record and sequence your own sounds. It only offered 1.2 seconds of sample time, but that was enough to load in your own drum hits and break away from the factory presets. And as incredible as it was, producers were quickly asking for more.
What people were telling us is, we want more memory, we want more of our own sounds. So we eventually expanded that to the SP-1200, and what we saw people starting to do is sample not drum sounds, but instrumental loops.
With 10 seconds of sampling time, the SP-1200 gave producers far more control, and it became the backbone of the golden era of hip-hop.
The SP-1200 had the littlest bit of sampling time, but I like the limitations so that you're forced to be creative with that little bit of time and still make an ill-ass beat.
However, to stretch that memory further, producers got crafty. They'd play vinyl at 45 or even 78 RPM, sample it fast, and then slow it down in the machine. That gritty, slightly warped tone. It wasn't a style choice, it was necessity. And that same year, Akai released the S950, a rack mount sampler that let you pitch shift and time stretch without changing the tempo. Now producers could take a vocal, change its key, and keep it in time. And the S950 worked beautifully alongside the SP-1200. You could use the SP for its crunch and swing, and trigger loops and vocals from the S950 via MIDI. Then came the machine that brought it all together, the MPC60. Co-designed by Roger Linn, it fused powerful sampling with a sequencer and velocity-sensitive pads. By the 1990s, sample-based music wasn't underground anymore. From boom bap to house to jungle, entire genres were now built out of the idea that any audio could be used as raw material. With sampling now firmly at the heart of music production, the next big shift wasn't in sound. It was in how that sound was handled. This was the last major leap in physical hardware. From here on out, home computers got cheaper, and suddenly bedroom producers had access to serious firepower. You had samplers built right into your door. Contact, Logic's EXS24, the NNXT and Reason. Then companies like Ableton and Native Instruments took things further, creating their own hybrid tools, the Push, the Machine. And in more recent years, technology and AI have made it possible to break a sample into its individual stems, giving producers even more control. The tools changed, the workflows changed, but the spirit has pretty much stayed the same, even if the old heads might not agree. And if you're a producer into sampling, beat battles, looking to collaborate, or just to hang out with like-minded individuals, our Discord is the perfect place for that. And the link for that is in the description. I'd love to see some of you there. Likewise, don't forget to check out our sample packs. The link for those is also in the description.